We can pick it up right here for episode 4. So for episode 4, right, we have Wendy, who now recovering again from fainting at the end of the last one. So first she was, injured by the xenomorph, then she passed out when she made it there. So now she's recovering from this. And we have a Cavalier and we have Arthur. So Arthur, I would kind of describe him as I guess, like he's the IT person, right? Like he's the one that understands the making of the machine. So he's kind of the IT guy, the main one, right? So Cavalier and Arthur, they're trying to help diagnose what's going on with this, what's going on with her hearing and why she could hear this. So you see they kind of play with, what frequency she could hear. And then she's, able to kind of, hear at, I guess, what decibel level, whatever, she could hear the xenomorph. And also what they do is, when she hears the voice or when she hears the sounds, obviously no one else could hear the sounds, not even the Lost Boys, because Curly's in the room, and she can't hear it, but Wendy can. So Boy Cavalier is like, hey, can you replicate the sound? And you see her, she's able to, replicate what she hears. And I don't know, it kind of feels a little goofy, right? Like it just, I don't know, it's something about it feels weird. Like it makes sense within the story to allow her to do that if you're trying to build up this idea that she could communicate with the xenomorphs. So I don't know a better way you could do it, but it does always kind of feel weird when she's just kind of making these weird mouth sounds and she's communicating with the xenomorph. I don't know. I don't want to dwell on it a whole lot. It just kind of, I don't know a better way to represent it. It just kind of felt odd to me whenever I saw it pop up.
Mm-hmm.
So we have Morrow, right? So Morrow continues to communicate with Slightly, and he tries to convince Slightly to grab one of the xenomorph eggs, right? And he wants to, have the face hugger that's inside of it latch on to somebody, right? So he's trying to convince Slightly to do that. And if you're wondering, why would anybody why would anyone agree to do something like that? Well, Morrow kind of gives him a little bit of an ultimatum, because he finds out who Slightly's parents are, because Slightly, like a dumb kid, gave up his, personal health information, right? Don't give up your name, kid, right? It's a hard world out there. Learn early, you don't give out that type of information. But because he does, Morrow is able to locate his mother. So pretty much he threatens to harm the mother if he doesn't follow through on this. Obviously, Kirsh is behind the scenes, still listening in with the two. But that's what happens. And, right, so Luca, pretend you're a kid in a synthetic body. When do you kind of like decide that, hey, this is a little bit above my pay grade, right? Do you feel like it makes sense for Slightly just to kind of continue to sit there and just roll with this? Or do you feel like maybe it's time to get an adult involved?
Well, I was always taught to get an adult involved. So.
Yeah. Right. I mean, I guess maybe the future, right? Like maybe there's the idea of stranger danger, everything's not as big of an issue. But I was just like, geez, like at a certain stage, it's like, I get that, he's a kid. He feels like he's, in trouble or something, or to get in trouble. They constantly feed them the idea that they're adults. So, he probably feels like, a little bit of like shame that he's in this situation. But my God, it's like every time like something happens, it's like he just constantly gets goaded at doing something. And it's just like, you know what? I would have definitely have thrown out the help flag at a certain stage to get me through this, because they continue to get deeper and deeper into shit with Morrow. So you have those conversations happening, right? So Kirsh and Toodles, they continue to do like experiments, excuse me, on the alien species. And we kind of see more with the eyeball creature, right? So what they do is they bring a little sheep into the room, And we see the eyeball creature attach itself to the sheep, right? So it, digs out one of its eyes and controls the sheep. So, I kind of find it interesting how it like hops bodies, right? Because it feels like, I guess because it's small, it feels very vulnerable as it is, and it's willing to kind of jump into anything, right? Obviously, I wouldn't think a sheep to be very dangerous, but the sheep does look quite menacing. I will say with the little eyeball creature, but it is interesting how I guess vulnerable this eyeball creature is by itself, because when it's in something, it feels very creepy. But by itself, it's
I
just
mean,
kind of there.
well, I was gonna say, like, I mean, it's a very prominent eye. Like, it just bulges
Yes,
out of the
yes.
socket.
Yes. It definitely doesn't replace one-on-one. Like if you have this creature in your eye socket, you have this creature in your eye socket. So it is very noticeable. So we have them kind of continuing with their experiments. And we see now Arthur, right? So Arthur, the IT guy, he has this conversation with Dame. So Dame is the psychiatrist for the island, right? And particularly with the Lost Boys, right? So she is there to kind of, talk through talk them through everything that they're going through as children being in a adult body, right? So she is there to kind of converse with them, and kind of I guess the interesting is that Arthur and Dame, they're actually married, right? So kind of interesting that they're kind of I guess this like couple, right, where one of them is the IT person for all the synths, or all the hybrids, excuse me. And then Dame is the psychologist of the group, or psychiatrist, whatever one. I don't remember the difference, but she talks them through their problems. So they're kind of like discuss kind of what's happening, and obviously Arthur shows a whole lot of concern over what's going on, right? So he's kind of frustrated with how things are going, feels like the kids are being put out there in danger. And this is where, as they're having this conversation, Nib shows up, and she's like kind of like chatting, and she just kind of blurts out she thinks she's pregnant, right? So this young girl, right, who's in this adult body, just kind of blurts out like, "Hey, I think I'm pregnant." So Dane, the psychiatrist, is like, "Hey, cool, let's have a conversation about this." And as the conversation kind of goes on, Nib starts to get really hostile and super threatening, which causes Dame to call for assistance. But I just have here, what the hell is going on? And I just was like, I was kind of at this stage, and I'm like, what the hell is going on here now? Like, how is Nibs thinking that she's pregnant? I understand that she had this close encounter with the eye creature, right? So that kind of probably kind of threw her some loops, but like she's not. I mean, other than being attacked, like nothing else really happened with it. But then to like just be like, "Hey, I'm pregnant," and then now she's super hostile. It just, I don't know. It felt very weird, and I just, there was a lot of times where I just felt like I was scratching my head, like, what are they trying to tell with this story, right? Like, why is it that this character is going through this? Because I feel like everyone's going to be like, "Oh, well, she just has trauma." But I'm like, okay, but does that really explain why she's stating this now? So I don't know. I thought it was super weird. What did you think about Nibs thinking she was pregnant?
That was a pretty random. That was a pretty random thing to include.
Yeah.
And the whole thing. I mean, what's even more weird is the fact that Dame is trying to explain to her the birds and the bees, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, she's a synthetic. I mean, she's never going to experience this anyway. So, like, what's the point? Plus, I think they allude to the fact that that the hybrids, they're downloaded all the information that's needed, right? So
Yeah.
it's not like they're really having to learn anything. It just gets automatically installed into their processing unit, so they should know how it works. So the fact that she's going around saying, "Oh, I'm pregnant," but then she acts naive and says, "Well, I don't really know how things work." It's like, I'm pretty sure that was part of the basic operating,
Well,
system.
so I will say this though, right? So she worked on a farm, right? She even says that. So she kind of knows more than she's letting on because she dealt with animals on farms, and I'm sure birth was something that she had to deal with.
Yeah,
So
but
even
they're
with
but they're animals. Like
oh yes, of course,
I don't think she would actually kind of equate what's
of
going on
course, yes, yeah,
with a cow
absolutely,
and a
yes.
bull with her.
Yes, correct. Yes, no, absolutely. And it's just I don't. It's such a weird choice because it's like if you wanted her to question if she was taken over by the eye or not, because she can't really tell. Like to me, that's like okay, that's interesting, right? Like, what would you do if this creature like take control of people and that creature was like glued to your head? Then yeah, I would kind of be like, okay, sure, like I would understand that. But for her just to be like, oh, I'm pregnant, I'm like, okay, that's just kind of a really weird thing to insert into your film. So, or excuse me, your TV series. So, I don't know, that was weird. And then kind of the episode 4, it ends off with Wendy is kind of communicating with the little alien embryo, and the alien embryo is actually in Joe's injured lung that he got taken out and replaced with a cybernetic one. So
Which was
kind of
equally weird, by the
yes,
way.
I know, very odd, right? And Boy Cavalier, we kind of like made a joke, like hey, you won't believe what we're doing with your lung, and I'm like, okay, that's kind of weird. But so the baby kind of has been gestating his lung, and we see at the end of the episode the baby xenomorph pops out, right, and we see like a little baby xenomorph that we would see like in the first one when it bursts out of what's his face's body. So um I will say there, like, it is weird, but there is like a little bit of it's like, oh, she, always, has a close connection with her brother. This is kind of born from her brother. So, like, in kind of a weird familial way, I feel like you could kind of say there's a connection, but it is odd, right? And
Yeah.
that's really the best way to sum up episode 4 for me is everything just feels odd, right? I think seeing the creatures and the experiments were very interesting, but then almost all of the other characters, especially the hybrids, it just feels like they get pulled into the most random directions, and it just makes things feel weird. Some of them, like Wendy, just have like everything kind of focuses through her, which is fine, right? Because I would consider Wendy to be kind of the main character. But then like you will spend large chunks of time where it's like, oh, Slightly's going through all of this, and Smee's just off on the sideline somewhere. Or Nibs is all of a sudden pregnant. What's gonna go on with that? There's just a bunch of like random things that are going on, and it just kind of made it feel inconsistent. So this is where I was kind of like, I'm still interested, but I felt like if this is where the story's going to go, I'm probably not going to enjoy how it all wraps up. But yeah, I think 4 was where I started to feel like, okay, I'm still interested, but I also don't feel like the quality is maybe matching what I would hope at this stage. So, what'd you think? Episode 4, halfway through. Where are we at, Luke?
Well, to follow your point about familial connections, it does have that. It kind of harkens back to Alien Resurrections, right? Where that newborn xenomorph kind of bonds
that's
with.
a good point. Yeah,
bonds with the Ripley clone, and it's just, and like I said before, like each episode is like an allusion or an homage to the previous Alien movies. But yeah, I agree with you. Like it just seems so random and out of place, and I mean there were just so many elements of the story that didn't need to be there, right? I mean, really, the only storyline that made sense was Morrow threatening, Slightly's family,
Yes.
because at least there he's doing it because he's trying to accomplish the goal of retrieving, the eggs. Everything else was just like it was just shock, like it was just there for shock value.
Yeah.
But it had no payoff. Like, yeah, like you have this synthetic girl who just randomly walks in and says, "Oh, I'm pregnant," and you're like, okay, well, how do I process that information? Because it's so weird and so random.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of that scene from The Life of Brian where I think it was like the People's Liberation Front. They're having a conversation, and one of the men says, you know, I want to have babies. That's what it reminded me of. I was like, I was like how, like I know the alien movies have always had like a bit of a body horror weirdness to it, but I mean, but that's just one of those things where you kind of have to play it pretty well, because it's not one of those things that you can just like replicate in, you know, in any movie. Like you kind of have to do it artfully, right? Whereas here it's like well, it really only works if it's with humans, like what we saw in Prometheus, where Shaw thinks she's pregnant, but she's got that little alien thing in her body. Whereas here it's like having Nibs say she's pregnant. Well, it makes no sense, because one, she's synthetic, and two, there's no payoff. So what exactly are we going to see, apart from the fact that she's going to devolve like deeper into madness, right?
Yes. And I always, one of the weakest things I always see is like people talk about, well, she's just having this mental PTSD thing, right? Like that doesn't just like wipe away random things happening, right? Like I could totally understand the fact that someone's going through a traumatic event and they have to process it, but from an audience perspective, right, it has to make sense, right? And you can have someone suffer from something like that and have it story-wise make sense with this execution, but to have her just be like, I'm pregnant. Like I saw people talk about like, oh, well, she's having PTSD and she's, you know, tying this stuff together. I'm like, you know what? That's a little bit too much, right? Make the story more coherent for the non, you know, armchair psychologists out there that are just trying to understand more about the characters.
How do you go from being attacked by an eye creature to saying you're pregnant?
No idea.
That is a very random
online. People online will defend that shit till they're dead, right? So just gonna throw that out there. They're going out there and defend that. So, but yeah, that is episode 4, and we are halfway through.
All right.